Let's further discuss this now with Manoj Kewalramani. He's a research fellow at the Takshashila Institution for Research and Education in Public Policy. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. I want to first start off by talking about the timing of this visit. It's the first time that Putin is going to make a visit to India since invading Ukraine.
Yeah, look, I think that this is an important visit. This is part of bilateral symmetry between the two countries. Putin's last visit to India was in 2021. And subsequently, this is the one after that. So I look at this not something particularly new or something particularly specific in the context of the timing. I think this is part of the bilateral engagement with the two countries. This is a special and privileged partnership, as both countries say. There's a deep historic relationship, and it is sustained through many ups and downs. So I look at the visit in that context of a routine rather than something specifically unique that's taking place.
Indian officials, as I mentioned, have raised concerns that these new energy and defense deals that they may make moving forward won't sit well with the United States. What do you make of that?
Look, I think there's always a challenge in terms of how the United States' policy functions in this regard. The fact, like your previous report also showed, that the US is engaging with Russia. The US is trying to talk to Russia, not just about the war in Ukraine, but also about a broader potential deal in which Russia becomes a normalized global actor. So I don't necessarily, therefore, think that this should be something that should be particularly concerning in that regard. Now, would specific deals lead to cause for concern? Perhaps they will, but India is a large global power. It's not going to give any country a veto over its foreign policy. And if there are certain costs that come with something that is specifically required, particularly in the context of, say, air defenses, which in the Indian experience have performed well and were critical earlier this year in the conflict with Pakistan, those are the investments that India will make. But whether these investments will be made particularly in terms of the jets and the purchase of jets, I think that's still far away. Air defenses are the areas I think where we can see much more taking place. But jets, I think it's a much more complicated picture. How the US will react? Look, India's engagement with the US is multifaceted. There is a strategic logic to that relationship. And I think this is a sort of tightrope of multi-alignment that India is walking and will continue to walk. There are a few other options for India.
Right. I mean, he's already doubled tariffs on Indian goods. How might this come at the cost of Indians? Domestically, what are people saying about this visit?
Look, I think that domestically, when it comes to the American policy since August, when the tariffs were imposed on select commodities, I think there was a backlash with regard to US policy, and there was tremendous criticism of the US. I think that there is concern, particularly amongst business communities, about the impact that some of the increased American pressure on economic policy can have. But I think that there is also a realization that, look, India's relationship with Russia needs to remain strong from a perspective of its strategic engagement when it comes to continental security, India's access to Eurasia, and India's security concerns in Eurasia. So in that sense, there is an understanding. I don't necessarily think that there is going to be any tremendous backlash. I think there is understanding within India that that the world is changing, the world order is changing, and India needs to manage these diversified partnerships. So I don't necessarily think that there is going to be tremendous domestic backlash with this regard. The last point that I'll add, I think from an Indian perspective, there is a recognition that Russia needs to be kept close because Russian dependence on China is strategically disadvantageous to India. So I don't think that there is going to be domestic backlash when it comes to this visit.
Okay, Manoj Kewalramani, thank you so much for being with us here on the NewsHour and sharing that insight with us. I appreciate it.